edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I'm Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. And I don't have a mic today. I'm flying, I'm in my parents' house. I'm got a jet overhead. I'm kind of winging it a little bit, Jack.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. I feel like we wing it every week. You're in Jacksonville, Florida, and nothing speaks like podcasting after a Women's College World Series run, much like Jacksonville, Florida. So let's get into it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Women's College World Series was here. I had my tickets, showed up to a random stadium. I was like, what in the world? And now I'm just here with my parents. No, covering UVA, which is exciting, UVA baseball. So that has me here. But they had enough rain delays that I was able to actually watch a surprising amount of JMU softball.
Yeah, UVA baseball rained out every single second of every single day, it seemed like, it was hilarious. Bennett would be texting us about what game he was covering or what he was working on, and it felt like he was covering the same ODU UVA baseball game for 4 days straight, because ODU played UVA, and then the next game got rained out, and then the next game just took 18 hours to complete.
I appreciate the Monday game, that second game that got rained out, was originally slated to start at 7 o'clock. They moved it up to 5 p.m., and I kid you not, the rain started at exactly 5 p.m., rains for 4 hours, and they canceled the game. And postponed the game. I was cracking up because JMU played at 4, and I was like, sweet, I'll watch this before going over to the stadium for the 7 o'clock game. Then I was like, nope. So I missed a bunch of the beginning, end up watching as they sort of lose the lead late. Really, when I didn't watch, they're up like 1-0 through 3 innings, turned it on, they get outscored 7-0. So is it my fault?
I was leaning towards that. Did you watch any of the second game against Oklahoma?
I think I watched part of that one. I definitely watched the full Oklahoma State game and the full first Oklahoma game. I think I was kind of in and out. I saw Sarah Jubas's 3-run home run in the second Oklahoma game, and kind of watched a little bit at the end, but didn't get the full experience per se.
Yeah, it was a time. It's come to an end, but what a journey. I don't think, as I'm stuttering trying to put it into words, I don't think you can put into words kind of what JMU did. Like, they didn't get to the championship game, but en route to trying to get to the championship game, they managed to take down the number 1 team in the country, holding them to 3 runs, which was absolutely insane. And then they proceeded to take down number 5 Oklahoma State, both on a quote-unquote neutral site. But the Women's College World Series, as everyone knows, is in Oklahoma City, which is, I think, 20 miles away from Norman, Oklahoma. And I'm not sure how close it is to Oklahoma State, but I think
it might even be closer.
Like, it just absolutely home games, but managed to win those by a combined score of 6-4. And then a close game, which I guess we can talk a little bit more about, which I think they should have won the second Oklahoma game, not because of the hole in the fence, just because of the amount of opportunities they had. And then the last game against Oklahoma, which started off fantastically and then just slowly slipped away from the Dukes with each batter, each hit. And it was a little sad. But what an impact. Like, you try to put this into words. I just can't. Like, the impact it made not only on the softball world, but all of the sports world seemed to be watching.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool, but at the end of the day, I mean, if you're a JMU athletic program, right, the goal is a national title. So a failure of a season, in my opinion. No, just an unbelievable year for them.
Sorry to interrupt, but you know who probably has that outlook? Ezra Duke. I don't know if our listeners have seen Ezra Duke on Twitter, but he's the most pessimistic. He probably listens to this podcast, takes notes, and thinks about how he can complain on Twitter to us about it. He was probably like, this is
like that guy. He's more active during football season. I missed him a little bit the last few weeks. But, I mean, just an unbelievable run. And it was kind of hard to explain. I was thinking about it the other day, but it's like, normally if you watch March Madness or any of these events, or even if it's like the Little League World Series, I feel like people are able to kind of captivate the country during that time. And maybe it's golf or tennis where an underdog story rises up because it's like, you don't watch that a ton, but when it does happen, people are kind of aware of it. But it's rarely do you have like a Cinderella star like Odyssey Alexander, someone who rises up the nation doesn't know about. I know she's obviously really good. So not taking anything away, but she was kind of a Cinderella star in this tournament. And it's crazy because like we all know everything about her. or not everything, but like we're very familiar with her. So to see like ESPN and the Washington Post writing stories and doing all these features on her when we watched her for 4 years is unbelievably cool. And it just feels like every time you're near someone, you like have to tell them that you're familiar with that. Like that's how I felt. It was like, oh, I've seen Odyssey Alexander for 4 years. Like it's no surprise to us. Like it was just felt really cool. It felt like, one of your own, one JMU person is captivating the nation. It's so cool too, because like Megan Good definitely got some publicity, especially her freshman year. She was really good against LSU in the super regionals, and she was really good when they beat Michigan in the regional. But she never had a Women's College World Series experience. She never became like, I don't think she got a ton of ESPN and Washington Post features on her.
Yeah,
Like this is crazy.
People don't tune into the super regionals or
Mm-hmm.
even the regionals, which is where Megan had probably the most of her success. They tune into the Women's College World Series though, and yeah, like it's just awesome to sit back and then hear these stories that we didn't really know either. Like ESPN did some digging and like did reporting of their own, which I don't think you necessarily see a lot at the March Madness, like at the March Madnesses or the college football playoffs. Like they're retelling the stories for the national audience.
Yeah.
They were telling stories about Odyssey. I didn't know her grandparents raised her and she pitched at a concrete block. And like, I knew she was under recruited, but I never knew Mickey Dean went to go see a completely different person and was just amazed by Odyssey's ability in the circle. I didn't like so much of it, so many of the stories. We know what Odyssey is in the circle. We know what Odyssey is as a JMU player, but as a human being, the stories weren't really told about Odyssey, and they came out in the Women's College World Series, and that made it just so much more impactful. I think her journey through the Women's College World Series.
I have almost no opinions on like the actual games that happened. Like I think if you're a Jamie fan listening to this, you probably watch them and are somewhat familiar with what happened and everything in those games. So that's something that I don't have a ton of takes on. But like I hope that people in the local media, especially, realize kind of the lightning rod that JMU softball can be, and would tell more stories like that. And I know that's hard, especially this year with like spring football. But I think people do care if the team is good, and I wish there were more stories about it. Where I feel like people came in late and we're kind of talking about things later, which I understand a little bit. But even like the Breeze, like tell me some stories that I wouldn't know. Like I shouldn't you shouldn't have to wait to the fifth year, and some of this is, I guess you could say, my fault. I was in the Breeze for like 3 years when Odyssey was there. But I mean, you can't tell me as a JMU sports fan that I should have to wait until the fifth year senior who got like the extra year for COVID makes it to the Women's College World Series to know like how she started playing softball as the best softball player on the team. And some of that even probably falls on athletics communications, which might know that more so. And it'd be cool if they like, I don't know, had more in-house stuff or anything just to tell us what was going on. Even if they don't do in-house, if they could find stories and then pitch it to the DNR or the Breeze or whatever. Like I would like to know more about these players. I'd like to know more about Kate Gordon. When's the last time we read like anything about Sarah Jubas other than Sarah Jubas being really good at softball? Like, how did Sarah Jubas become really good? Why did she pick JMU? All these things. Like there are a lot of
so clutch. What goes off in her mind when it's a 3-2 count with 2 outs and two on? Like how does she hit a home run there? Like what has exactly.
I just like to know more about the team, and I hope that happens in the future. Even like, give me something on Alyssa Humphrey. Like, is she going to continue that line of great JMU pitchers? Like, I'm excited for next season and the content. They lose a whole bunch. It's kind of unclear exactly who they lose. I think most of the fifth-year seniors, Lindsay Meeks made it seem like she is leaving, which makes sense because she's enrolled in another school. But yeah, I mean, I just want to know more, and I hope that that's part of what this run did was maybe not even so much like national attention for JMU, even though we can get into that, and it obviously brought a lot. And it's reasonable to expect JMU to get a Power 5 offer, right? I mean, it's coming, I mean, the PR of adding the softball.
Podcast listeners can't see. If you're watching on YouTube, you saw it. Podcast listeners could not see my intense eye roll right there.
No, but it's obviously not going to do that. But it's good PR for the university. It's really cool to see JMU on a national stage. But for me, as a JMU fan who consumes stuff regularly, give me stuff next year when ESPN does not care. Like, yes. I want to know about the team next year, even if they're not, and I probably don't think they will be, a Women's College World Series team. I want to know how this helps in recruiting. I want to know like who the players next year are going to step up. I want to know more about the team moving forward.
And I want to see the stories of in 2 years, we're talking about how did this Women's College World Series, did it flip any commits? Was Florida State sniffing around a JMU verbal commit? I just saw Shane Metlin's tweet and from 2015 that made me think of this. But like, was Florida State sniffing around a JMU verbal commit? And this Women's College World Series run made her harden her stance and wanting to go to JMU. Like, not just next season, but I want coverage now. Like, we've both been big softball people, especially during my time at JMU. I was really into softball. I loved working those events. But since leaving, it's been kind of hard to follow the team. One, because they just play an insane schedule where they're playing a Tuesday at 2 and then a Wednesday at 4. Like, just a weird schedule. But there's no dedicated beat writer. There's no coverage. You don't know. Like, when Odyssey went out earlier this season, there was no one to tell us what was injured. When she went out, was it last season before the COVID shutdown? She went out and no one knew what was wrong. And, like, JMU fans shown it was so apparent, and it was apparent through our engagement on Twitter, and that seems like such a weird thing to like gauge it, but we were hitting home run after home run on our tweets, stuff that wouldn't go that high with football. Like, softball fans are a crazed bunch and they will find the content, and I just want to see WHSV, DNR, The Breeze give more coverage. If we were given access, we would be giving like any type of story we could on this team. Like, they just deserve so much, and it would get clicks. And because at the end of the day, clicks are what, drive everything. But a softball story would get clicks. A softball beat writer, like, maybe not a full-time beat writer, but get a writer to a game a week, a weekend doubleheader. Get a writer there. Get someone to tweet it. Get someone to ask questions at the post-game press conferences that happen between a reporter and a coach on the sideline on the third base side. Like, do something. Like, yeah, I think you hit it on the head. Now I'm just kind of rambling about it, but I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I think that's right. It'd be cool to get more information and stories, and like a detailed feature on Odyssey Alexander at some point, even before the end of the season, would have been, I think, just as interesting as reading, an analysis piece on men's basketball or the football team or anything like that.
Like, not to say I don't care about I love it. Showed through in our podcast and our coverage. We both are football heads and we love men's basketball. But when it doesn't come to transfers, which is we're completely out of the transfer time for men's basketball, and it's when it's football off season, you don't need to keep pumping me with the same analysis, just with different quotes. Like, and even not just softball, baseball would probably command coverage if they're actually good. But like the smaller sports, women's golf had a fantastic season, men's golf, tennis, women's tennis, men's tennis, cross country, all of these other sports, like, there's stories there. And I think it just showed that, probably not to the same scale that softball is, but if JMU's competing at an extremely high level, I think JMU fans will care regardless. And if you can find a story to tell within a team that's on a national stage, JMU Nation will flock to it and claim it as their own and become the biggest supporters.
Yeah, I mean, I'd even be interested, like, just big picture stuff with every sport, like women's tennis. Like, how did Coach Shelley come in and transform them from a team that seemed like they were really good, then lost a really good coach, head coach, and their top player, and still become an NCAA tournament caliber team in some of these seasons. And then like baseball, like the Valley League is huge in that area. Baseball, people care about baseball, and the team stinks. Like, to me, that would be a storyline too. Like, tell me what's up with Eichenberry. Like, is he coming back? Like, if he does, what does he need to do to turn the team around? So, I mean, anything like that, I think, would be big picture and exciting. And with softball, it's like, we had talked about them all season, how we were excited about them. And then to not really know anything about the team until they're in Oklahoma City and their season's going to end in a day or two, it was kind of frustrating a little bit. So, I mean, I understand why it happened. And it's really hard, like, if you're the DNR and you've got, like a basically a 2-person reporting staff and the football team played in the spring, you're probably not going to get a whole lot. I totally get that. Most of our podcasts were about football. Like it's hard. I just wish that there was more. And I think this run might actually lead to more,
Yeah.
which excites me a lot as a softball fan. I also think for JMU casual fans to get a taste of like what softball can be, especially on this level, like I think there are going to be people who make it out to games in the spring that are regular season games are like, I want to watch Alyssa Humphrey. I want to watch, the players who come back and the new players and see this program develop. I think JMU could take a large step from this.
Yeah. And I mean, that postseason, it was just so much fun. Beating Oklahoma in extra inning. Like, I don't think this postseason, like, you couldn't have written a better script outside of winning the championship than what happened, though. Like, JMU fans, no one really like, we said this last podcast, if you said you expected JMU to beat Oklahoma in that first game, you were lying to yourself. And just the way they were able to do it with high intensity, high drama, extra innings, Odyssey's dealing, and then the next game they beat Oklahoma State in a 2-1 low scoring, high drama type of game. That's what you want in postseason play. That's what gets people excited. Now, if they went out and they lost those games, I don't think JMU cares as much. JMU Nation cares as much. But it was just absolutely the perfect way to win those games. And it was just awesome to win those games in general.
There might have been a football play at some point that was really dramatic that I forget. And I know Justin Amati had some big time dunks, but like Odyssey Alexander in the 7th inning against Oklahoma State, picking up the bunt in front of home plate, diving and getting, that is by far the best play I've seen this year, probably since I started watching JMU sports. Like, I'm going to watch that for years to come. Like, that was unbelievable.
And not only that, then the impact it had on MLB, because then you tweeted from JMU Sports News that, like, MLB players are already copying Odyssey Alexander. But then it was funny because the Seattle Mariners would literally later that night posted a picture of both of the plays, and they, like, said, I forgot what they said, but they added Odyssey, and, like, they played into it.
I thought that was hilarious. And also the fact that, like, you almost never see that play at any level where, like, a little grounder or bunt goes to the pitcher who then dives and gets someone out running home from third. And to have it happen in, like, a 2-hour span was hilarious.
Sports works weird like that. But then after the Oklahoma game, Oklahoma State, you're riding this high, and then the game gets rained out. Wait, was that? No, the Sunday game they play. Some momentum going to Sarah Jubas home run to tie it. They have some runners in scoring position, and then they lose. And then the rain out, which just extended everything. I think you hated the rainouts from the UVA ODU perspective, but I loved this rainout. It extended this game. It put more eyes on it on Monday. Despite the loss, the standing ovation that Odyssey got from an Oklahoma crowd, I've never seen anything like that in sports. I don't think I ever will.
The Women's College World Series is just unbelievable to begin with. Like, it's so cool to have JMU there, to have Odyssey become the star. That moment, like you mentioned, where they give her a standing O was crazy. I mean, like, Holly Rowe interviewed her at the end, was like choking up for the way that she competed.
It was that final interview got me a little choked up. It was emotional. It was that whole run. I mean, I teared up after they beat the Oklahoma in the first game. Like, I was absolutely shocked and amazed. And then my neighbors probably hated me after the Oklahoma State game, because when she made that bunt catch dive out to preserve the 1-run lead in the set, I was going absolutely bonkers. But then just the way it finished, you just were kind of sitting there and you're like, I didn't really feel sadness when they lost, or like sorrow, or like any downness. It was more just like they did that. They beat the number 1 team in the country, and then they put them on the ropes for 2 games. Granted, it was a 7-1 loss, but for a majority of that game, it was 1-1, high stakes.
Yeah, I mean, it was so cool. And I wrote earlier when I previewed them, like before the regional started, I was like, are they a national championship contender? No. And I will say that I was wrong on that. Like, they were every bit good enough to upset Oklahoma again. If they had done that, they would have had a good chance. I think Florida State beat Oklahoma last night, so they're a game up.
I think Florida State, are they playing right now?
I think it's probably a night game, would be my guess. But they'll probably, I guess, by the time you listen to this, they might have wrapped that one up, and they might be. We'll see what happens there. But Florida State's playing pretty darn well. But
Yeah.
Oklahoma's scary, and like everyone in this group, like after 2 games, I was like, all right, JMU and Bama, that could be the title game, and now it's Oklahoma, Florida State. Like, I mean, there's such a thin line between advancing in this and not. For them to put themselves in position to have one game to make it to the finals was crazy to me.
And not like one game to make it to the finals, and then they were so close in doing it. Like,
Yeah.
the only part that hurt about this whole journey was that second game against Oklahoma and just having so many runners in scoring position. It seemed, I think, like for the first 4 innings in that game, they had a runner on second, and they struck out or flew out or finished the inning with runner in scoring position. I think they were 1-7, 1-for-7, something like that. And that was what hurt, not the hole in the outfield wall, just not being able to capitalize on the opportunities. But at the same time, you're facing Oklahoma. Like, it's going to be hard to advance your runners, to turn your runners over and manufacture runs. But that kind of hurt. But in the end, it was absolutely amazing.
Such a good run, and I'm so excited for the program and sort of where they will go from here. I think they've got potential to do a lot of good. I'm excited for next season across the board in sports. It was also cool just to have a JMU team in June. Like, we have such a small gap, right? It's like, what is it, like 2-ish months, and there's going to be a ton of football content coming in. So I'm pretty excited for what's next with the entire athletic department. But for softball to do this on a national stage, I was talking to someone the other day, and they're like, how does this, compare to football in 2016? And it's like, well, it's way cooler because they're going up against the actual best teams in the country.
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking about this, there's not a football team, and of course I'm doing the like men's sport comparison, but there's not a football team that JMU, I guess that's probably the most popular sport at JMU. There's not a football team in the FCS that I would consider an upset if JMU beats them. Like, you could say North Dakota State, but I think they're pretty much on the same playing field. You can go to men's basketball, women's basketball. There are absolutely upsets that those teams could have if they played them. And to me, that's when it's the most exciting. Like, when softball played number 1 Oklahoma, in my initial expectation were like, we might get run ruled. And then they win 4-3 in Oklahoma City. It's like, that's crazy. Like, the football team can never do anything like that unless they're playing an FBS game.
The football team can never do that, period. Like, it's just like, if they ever went to Tuscaloosa, or let's say Birmingham, because let's have a neutral site that isn't really a neutral site, and played Alabama, they would get throttled and lose 72-3. Like, and that's no slight against the JMU football team. That's just, there's such a different in a gap in scholarships and everything in football. I think that's also what makes basketball, women's and men's, and softball, and even baseball so much fun when it comes to these types of tournaments, because there isn't the difference between FBS and FCS. This is all Division I, so you all have the same scholarships from that point of view. Granted, your facilities and your resources are different, but that's what just makes it so much fun. Like, the fact that they can just go and take down Missouri in 3 games and beat Oklahoma and take down Liberty in Tennessee. It was fun. I guess we can just jump back into it. The craziest part of the whole Women's College World Series wasn't the fact that they got there, wasn't the fact even that they beat number 1 Oklahoma, because you can kind of have flukes like that. I think it was the fact they beat Oklahoma, then beat Oklahoma State, and looked dominant.
They were so good. Like, Odyssey played really well. The lineup did just enough defense. Field, Oklahoma made a diving catch, and I was like, please stop. Like, just please stop doing this.
You kind of broke up there, but I assume you said the Oklahoma defense in the second game, where they were hitting like little flares.
The diving catches were insane.
I can't get over, and at this point, I feel like the podcast has now devolved into just hyping up Odyssey, but I think that's kind of what's deserved at this point. I would argue, I won't get into that. It's not fair to compare her against other pitching greats at this point. I think it's time to step back and just appreciate the pure dominance that she put on through the entire postseason. Over 1,000 pitches, about 90% of the team's innings pitched were all by her. Just absolutely insane. Averaging more than a strikeout an inning. Just, she was balling.
She's got to be in the JMU softball GOAT conversation. Like, even after what Megan Good did, I think Megan maybe
Damn, you broke up again, bro.
career.
You broke up again.
Do you have me now?
I have you now.
I was saying she's got to be in the GOAT conversation for JMU softball greats, given how she played on such a big stage. Obviously, Megan's career accomplishments might be slightly ahead of hers.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I was going to say, and then I stopped myself just because I don't want to get into the debate yet. I think it's definitely a worthy debate to have, and probably will be had by JMU fans and JMU podcasts like us and the sports blog guys alike, because it's just easy content. It's actually a great question. I just don't want to get into it right now because I still want to appreciate what she did.
Yeah, and it was unbelievable. Like, the way she played in every series. This team and program was, extremely lucky to have her and have her stick around as long as she did. And, I mean, it's a team that will certainly be missed.
Yeah. I mean, what? They're now losing Meeks, Gordon, Alexander, Nyokis.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with the other redshirt juniors, where you talk about Sarah Jubis, who may or may not agree, and all that stuff. I haven't seen really any information on that. Michelle Sullivan. So hopefully that information is eventually released, or maybe I missed it. But
yeah, I haven't seen anything about who's returning next year. I would love to see that, whether it's from Shane at the DNR or if it's from JMU softball themselves. I would love to see who's coming back next year.
Exactly. They also had that. They had a welcome back party in Harrisonburg that seemed to be very well attended.
There was a picture that surfaced. I forgot who was the original tweeter of it, but it's been kind of passed around. Different accounts have posted it. Absolutely insane the amount of people that were flocked around Odyssey getting an autograph from her.
Yeah, just super cool. And they changed the time like 3 times. So to still have the crowd be that big, it's supposed to be 4:00, and then they were getting in earlier. It moved to like 3:30, and it moved to 2:30, it just kept moving around. But for them to actually do it and have a big crowd is super cool. They captivated the nation and JMU Nation.
I don't think we'll ever see a JMU team capped unless men's basketball. Really, I think the only way for a JMU team to captivate the nation would be a men's basketball March run.
I wonder if the women's team could get, like, if the women's team went like Final Four at some point, I bet they would get a decent amount, just because women's basketball, I feel like now is starting to get reasonable coverage. So I feel like they could have a similar ESPN style run. But even then, it would still be tough, because I think Harrisonburg is maybe a little more of a baseball, softball community than it is a hoops community.
Yeah, that's very, very valid.
Also, don't know how realistic it is that they will be making a Final Four run, because that sport's stupid hard to break through in. Well, hey, I think they're going to be nuts the next 2 years, women's basketball.
Yeah, I do too. 100%. I also think men's basketball will be pretty darn good for the next, as long as Byington's there.
I was just going to say, if men's basketball made like a Final Four run, the scene in Harrisonburg would be gross. Like, that'd be so much fun to go to.
There would be burning of things. That would be absolutely insane.
Because it would happen with students there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. They would all flock out of everywhere and just storm the quad.
I guess that explains the burning. You weren't really expecting, Harrisonburg 50-year-old community members to light couches on fire. So
yeah, exactly. I didn't expect them all to flock to Veterans Memorial Park at the welcome back ceremony and start flipping cars. I don't want to be premature and start like speculating about next season and stuff like that, but I'm going to do just that, just a quick hit. What do you think out of the team next season? Like, Women's College World Series probably is not. JMU fans, if that's what you expect out of this team for the next 10 years, please dial back your expectations. But what do you think is a reasonable expectation for this team next season?
This is where I got slightly sad at the end of the last Oklahoma game. Like, first it was Odyssey, like, crying. Started laughing. But I think for me, like, it's so hard to get back here. Like, it's really hard to get back to this point. So next year, like, I think the consistent goal every year should be to make a regional and put yourself in a position to be competitive in the regional. Like, one series, a selection committee hates mid-majors. The NCAA selection committee, really not a big mid-major fan. So it's going to be hard.
Yeah. I think that's a good point about saying the goal should be making it to a regional and to be competitive, because you never know what's going to happen from there. Maybe you luck out and you get a good region like we did against Tennessee and Liberty, both very beatable teams. And then you luck out, you have Missouri as your next team. Not saying Missouri was an easy out by any means, because that was an intense series as well, but definitely maybe even hosting regionals. But since the committee hates them, that probably, even if they go undefeated through the CAA and have 2 losses and a fantastic out-of-conference schedule, they probably still wouldn't even give them a host of a region.
I'm excited too. Like, recruiting within the state, I think, is fascinating because, like, Liberty is pretty good. Virginia Tech had a really good year. UVA just built a new facility. So you've got 2 Power Fives. You got another good mid-major. You got that. Then you're probably looking at kids that other Power Fives are looking at this point. So, I mean, the fact that they got Megan Good and Odyssey Alexander, who had a combined, like, 1 Division I scholarship offer outside of JMU, and had them become these great pitchers, is a very hard, like, model to consistently follow. You're probably not going to be able to do that forever. But, I mean, hey, they've done it twice. So we'll see what happens. But, I mean, I think you're also going to want to grab some of these, like, oh, hey, this is a top 25 player nationally. And, like, she thinks JMU is cool and she's from the area and you can grab her. So recruiting is really fun to watch.
Yeah, recruiting be a big thing. And also I think the development of Alyssa Humphrey from this season to next, from next season to the following, that's going to be huge.
I wonder how the radar guns work, because at one point in, like, the regional, I feel like she wasn't going over, like, 63. One of her pitches in the Women's College World Series, their gun had her at, like, 67. Like, I don't know if she was just, like, amped, which would make sense. But, like, if she can pitch anywhere, if she gets anywhere near 70 miles per hour with a 45-mile-per-hour changeup, she's going to be extremely irritating to try to hit against. So
that would be the most – can you imagine watching a pitch go by you at 68, just 68, and then the next pitch she just throws a lame duck 45-mile-an-hour changeup at the bottom of the plate, and you just freeze. How are you supposed to deal with that?
And if she gets you to 2 strikes in that situation where you have to defend the plate and you can't, like, guess on a pitch, I feel like you're screwed. It's like if you're timed up with a 45-mile-an-hour pitch, she throws it, high 60s to 70, like, you're not catching up. And if you're expecting kind of the fastball and it comes in and you swing and then you sit there for a second or two and you're waiting, the ball still hasn't crossed home plate, you're probably furious. So that'll be interesting. And then getting a second pitcher who is like Alyssa was good enough to come in and really help them in the regional and super regional. So I don't know if that's Bermudez developing or Caleb Bozeman developing, or if they end up adding more. But I'm interested to see too, like, what they can do pitching depth wise, because they did absolutely put everything on Odyssey's shoulders.
I think it'll probably be Bermudez, just because that's what we saw when Odyssey was out. She kind of stepped up. But I mean, if Bozeman has a large jump in terms of development, maybe they even have 3 arms that they can run through CAA with, which wouldn't be too surprising, because no offense to the CAA, but it's not a Power 5 conference. I forgot what I was going to say. I don't know. Alyssa Humphrey's development is going to be the key for how, or pulling another transfer, but I would like to see Humphrey kind of grow within her role at JMU and become that workhorse who throws 15 million pitches in a postseason run. That's just insane, too. Over 1,000 pitches thrown, and her arm didn't fall off. I know softball is different than baseball, but Jesus, that's got to do something to your shoulder.
Yeah, she was definitely tired by the end. I think it was an unbelievable run. So I'm excited to see what happens. I hope she's able to maybe tries to play a little bit professionally. I don't know if she will, but it would be fun if she did.
Alyssa or Odyssey?
Odyssey.
I just saw her like a tweet. Do you know Athletes Unlimited?
Yeah.
Someone, I think it was Coach Christie, whoever that is. No idea. That person just appeared and was JMU's biggest cheerleader.
Which was awesome.
It was really, has over 7,000 followers. Seems like is a kind of a larger voice in the softball world. But that also might be because JMU fans just kept retweeting her, so I kept seeing her. But she tweeted something about Athletes Unlimited should think about like redoing their draft after the Women's College World Series. That way Odyssey can be drafted, and Odyssey liked the tweet.
That'd be fun.
So I was like, oh, maybe if Athletes Unlimited reached out to Odyssey, I wouldn't be surprised. You know, it is a bummer though. This is a huge bummer. Odyssey can't be drafted to the USSSA Pride.
Are they out of roster spots?
No, they are no longer in the National Pro Fast Pitch.
What are they playing?
They just are an independent team.
Oh. So
I guess you could sign with them, but I thought that was weird. That was just a little tidbit I wanted to drop.
I know nothing about professional softball, so that is helpful information. I also didn't realize Alyssa was as good as she was. She was like a top 75 recruit in the 2020 class by Softball America, so her potential is pretty exciting if she can keep getting that velocity up. And I don't know, man. I'm excited about the future for that program. I think they've got some good players. At the same time, they're replacing a ton of talent.
Yeah, I agree. It was very, very reassuring to see Alyssa Humphrey step in when she did in big moments and produced. Did she allow a run?
I think Oklahoma got to her a little bit.
Okay. But other than that, I mean.
Someone might have got, I don't think Liberty did. I think Missouri got like one offer. I think they had like a solo homer.
Okay, and then she had one earned run in the last Oklahoma game. But, I mean, that's fantastic for a freshman who spot minutes is really good, and I think that's very, very promising for the future.
I'm excited about this team. I think they've been fun to watch for a few years. So now that there's more of that JMU bandwagon on them, I'm excited for people to grow in their fandom and keep getting better and learning more about the Dukes. It was a really exciting spring because of them.
Yes, it was. And now I think the podcast takes a 2-month hiatus until football comes back in August.
I think so. That probably makes the most sense. We might have some random guest things if we want to do it. But, yeah, there's probably not going to be a ton from us for our loyal listeners.
Yeah, I mean, this season, as like a quick look back, now that we're done looking back on the JMU softball season, but a quick look back on the JMU Sports News podcast season, we topped out at over 100 listeners almost every week this year.
It's pretty darn good.
Yeah, so thank you to all of our listeners from the bottom of our hearts. I don't know about if this is from the bottom of Bennett's heart. I won't speak for him. He's kind of a crass individual. No, but it's honestly crazy the growth we saw this season compared to past seasons. Like when we came back, I'm trying to see when we started. When we came back in October of 2020, we were hitting over 100 in almost all of them. We had a little bit of a lull between November to December, but then our listenership really grew. So keep telling your friends, and we appreciate you guys listening to over an hour of us rambling about JMU sports.
And I think next year's got a chance to be borderline historic with some of these teams. Like football is going to be darn good. I think they could be the favorite to win it all. You've got a men's basketball team that is competent. That's new.
Never have we gone into an off season about men's basketball and be like, this is a competent team that we feel that we're not guessing that they'll be the dark horse contender. We know they're going to be one of the favorites to win the CAA next season.
Because we absolutely have guessed before. Both of us have been like
every year during the Row era, I think you would hear us on our basketball preview pod and be like, I think this team might be the dark horse to, just shock the world.
And they were shocking when you watched them, I'll tell you that much, but not in a great way. So we've got that next year. I think the women's team is going to be really good. We've got a bunch of other sports, field hockey, lacrosse, softball. We'll see what happens with baseball, but they're going to be soccer. Women's golf was good. So, I mean, they got a lot of – that's a hard one to, I guess people don't really go out and, watch women's golf. But fun one to track. So I'm excited for the future next year. And also like the fact that fans can actually attend basketball games in the new arena. I'm excited to actually get there. I've not been there. I'm an hour away. They had all these COVID protocols. I couldn't go to a game. I was getting upset.
Please let me know when you're going, and I will walk down from Hoboken, New Jersey to the Atlantic Bank and Union, whatever. I still don't know what that freaking place is called.
I forget what they cut out and what they didn't cut out. I don't know. There's definitely a bank because people want to call it bank, which I'm still not sold on.
I don't know. Atlantic Union Bank Center.
That sounds right.
The AUBC. It's the
That's right. That's good work there.
It took out trust. It used to be the Atlantic Bank and Union Trust Center. I don't know. I
can't wait to go. That environment is hopeful. I'm actually interested to see that environment because they got a lot of seats in there, so I don't I don't know how many people are really going to these games.
I think the season was the perfect season to have before an empty season to get everyone really hyped.
See, I used to say that it would be good to get rid of Rowe a year earlier so they could have done this, and JMU fans kind of pushed back. And it turns out they were right. They knew a pandemic was coming, and it's worked out really well. That was genius of them. The players are familiar with the facility. And if you like guard play, you're going to love JMU men's basketball next year.
Yeah, about 15 guards and 2 players that are 6'7". So it's going to be fun. Ultra small ball. They're just going to run 1 through 5. It's going to be just guard.
If Bob Weiss could root for a men's basketball team, it would be the small ball JMU Dukes.
Give me a Bob Weiss coached JMU football the basketball team.
The Turks are underway.
We're really getting to the rambling part of this podcast. We're talking about, wow.
How are they doing?
I think they're 1-1. Let me look.
Chris Long is going to throw out the first pitch at a Charlottesville Tom Sox game. I got that press release.
Who is?
Chris Long, Charlottesville.
How did they get him?
He lives in Charlottesville and is all Charlottesville all the time.
I knew he lived in Charlottesville, but wow. His brother Kyle used to live in Hoboken, and I was trying to become friends with him because he worked on a show that I worked for, and then he decided to go and sign with the Chiefs.
I mean, I think it'd be kind of cool if we were invited to a Turks game, you and me, simultaneous first pitch. We're local celebs, man. JMU Sports News. We can sign autographs for people who don't want them, and they're like, "What are you handing me?" It's a napkin with our signature. So. We have a bright future ahead of us.
Oh, man. All right. For Bennett Conlon, it's been a fantastic season. JMU softball shocked the world. Odyssey Alexander is the biggest star in softball even today, a few days after JMU got bounced. Thank you for listening this season, this year. We look forward to next year in 2 months when football gets underway again. My name is Jack Fitzpatrick. I don't know if I already said that. See ya!